going to go off because I'm getting tired of this, and it's hit me enough to where today is the day that I'm going to speak my mind about this topic. Field events don't matter. Okay, now because I specialize in the jumps, I'm not going to talk about the throws and pole vault, especially. No shade to them at all. I just want to highlight my love, which is the horizontal jumps, even though the vertical jumps and throws have issues there as well. But this concept of the field events don't matter, um, I'm going to make a few gripes. Okay, so first thing is when you show up to a track meet or any sporting event, right? There's always a certain sound that you hear that reminds you like the sport's here, right? I remember playing basketball. You get to the basketball court. Before you even walk through the doors, you hear the screech of the shoes, right? And you're like, it's basketball time, right? You hear the basketball thump and all that stuff. Track and field, the sound that we hear that we know that we're at a track meet is going to be obviously cheers, right? But it's that gun, the gun sound of bang, and you know that this race is it's going, right? And then you hear the announcer and whoa, 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 whoa. You can't really hear what they're saying, but it's like, oh, lane five, right? And so that is what I would always do. And a side little quick little tangent is I used to, as a pro, not warm up with music. My biggest thing was I knew I was on the second half of my career, and I wanted to make sure that I was hearing the sounds of track and field to really like embrace that feeling of just the sport and to hear it. Anyway, so we hear this gunshot go off, right? And we're like, okay, we're in this sport. We're here. We're doing it. And then you think about, well, who's shooting the gun? It's a paid professional. It's a person that's specialized, that's certified to shoot the gun. They have special bullets. They have a special gun. Depending on what event you're at, they have a certain type of system, right? This gun either shoots a sound into a microphone that starts the timer for the timing system, or there is a specific connection between the actual gun itself that tells the system when to start. So you have this paid professional that's taught to look at starting positions, make sure you're behind the line, make sure you're not moving, right? Depending on the event, you'll have two, maybe three officials watching the start to make sure that it's fair and equal competition. But just go with one, the minimum, right? Then you have this state of the art camera system that can literally land a spacecraft onto the moon, right? It can differentiate runners, up to 8 or 9 runners, or even more, and say who got what place, where their body was, what they look like, right? All these images that are broken down to say so and so got first place, so and so got second place, even though they're 1/1000th of a second separated, right? And it's like, wow, you got this red coat that can see all 9 lanes, that's in a position to see everything, to make sure that the run is done correctly, started fairly. And then you have this timing system that can literally tell me exactly not only the time, but can tell me the wind and what direction it's going and how much wind there is. It's like, this is really good, right? We never have any discrepancies on times. If a kid says they ran a 10-2 in the 100 and it says zero point 0.9 wind, that kid ran a 10-2 in the 100. There's no question, right? But then we go, excuse me, then we go to the jumps pit. First thing is, where is the jump pit? Sometimes they're on the track. Sometimes they're on the apron up top. Excuse me, I don't know what's going on my throat. Sometimes, sometimes they're at the end of the aprons of the track, north and south side of the track. Sometimes they're along the side of the track. Sometimes they're off on the hill somewhere. Sometimes they're behind the stadium. Sometimes they're by the tennis courts, right? We don't know where they're at. Sometimes they're filled up with dog like poop. Sometimes they're a kitty litter box. Sometimes there's grass in it. Sometimes there's like there's not enough sand in it, right? And so jumpers are being penalized because pits are lower, right? They're jumping their best. And because the pit's lower, they're getting an advantage, right? Because their marks are skewed, because they're going to get more distance when you have a lower pit. However, it's not their fault that the pit is low. Just as if you have a plus 2 mile per hour wind pushing you in your 100-meter dash, it's not your fault that you PR'd with the perfect environment. If you run with the plus 2 miles per hour wind and you PR, it's a legal time. It counts. So the perfect environment is you want a tailwind that is 2 miles per hour or less, but 2 miles per hour is the peak. To have a 2 mile per hour assistance to your run, you're going to have a big PR, right? Of course, if you're all in the same race, everyone has the same advantage. But if you're in your own race, that's going to put you at least 2/10 of a second ahead of your competitors in the rankings, right? But when it comes to the jumps, like if the pit's low and they say we don't count this as a qualifying mark or whatever because the pit's low, it's not your fault, right? I've also seen facilities where the pit isn't long enough. For example, there's a school in our area where I had to physically have my top jumpers, because it was a dual meet, jump from an 18-foot long jump board. The long jump board wasn't a long jump board, it was a triple jump board. I watched the kid jump 21 feet and land, and his feet were hitting the concrete at the edge of the pit. So I had to say to my jumpers that go 22 feet, I was like, it's not looking good. And I don't want you to back off. And I need you to jump a big jump because this other kid jumps 21 feet. So I said, okay, well, I know you jump at least 20 feet every time. Like I'd never seen you jump anything less than 20 feet. So I had my specific jumpers that I know were safe do a pop up and see where they would go. But of course, they can't do a full pop up because they're not going to pop up 20 feet, right? Or 18. So I was like, you got to just run, you got to jump. And they jumped at 22, they're fine. But I was able to save them 5 feet. So they landed towards the middle of the pit. I've also seen runways that have holes in them. I've seen runways that their boards are chewed up, and I'm talking about like where it's wooden and it's uneven. I've also seen the worst case scenario where we had Tyler Holiday. He was a 10-year-old national leading jumper. He was jumping like 17 feet or something like that in as a 10-year-old. But he jumped, and just because of where he was on the board, he broke his kneecap. It literally split in half, and his his tendons basically pulled up, and it pulled the kneecaps apart. Very gruesome. And I was at the meet, and I had my athletes jumping from behind the board because it just felt safer for me. But he's a competitor, and he jumped, and that's what happened. He's fine now. He's jumping now, but to hear his cry and the pain that he was in, like I don't want to ever hear from anyone, and like just humans in general, never. And what I'm getting at with this whole thing is when we are at these pits, the facility amenities is not there. It's not the greatest, right? But then who do we have officiating these events? I honestly, from a high school meet, not invitational, but like dual meets, have never seen an actual official at the pits. I've only seen parents. And many invitationals, I see a lot of parents. Now, like state championship, things like that, there's always officials. But at these other meets, it's parents. So, for example, there was this girl from a school in our area. Her best was like 34, 35. And the next year, Her personal best was 39 feet. And I know all the jumpers in that area, and I know the programs they come from, and I know their averages as they improve. There are some athletes that do improve a lot. Many don't, but the ones that do have either outside coaching or specialized coaches that I physically, personally know. And so this athlete from the school was jumping, and all of a sudden had a 4 foot improvement from what 35 or something like that to 39. And I was like, okay, I know this athlete. I know how this athlete jumps, and a lot would have to happen for this athlete to PR by that much. Especially the last jump was 34, 35. And so I'm like, they'll fix it. The reality was they didn't. They didn't fix it. I don't expect the athlete ever to make adjustments because it's not the athlete's fault. However, the officials at the meet didn't know what board they went from because they weren't officials. They were parents. And each athlete goes from different boards. There's kids going from, I've seen 18-foot triple jump board. I've seen a 36. I've seen a 32, a 28, all these things. And if we have all these athletes jumping from these different boards, you have to know exactly where they're going from. And there's a process that if these parents were taught, the process is you pre-record their boards. So you know, okay, jumper number 5 is going from board 2. Board 2 is the 28-foot board. You jump, you measure from that board. You put a cone at that place so it reminds you where you are, right? So there's no confusion. Anyway, I'm assuming they didn't do that. They measured her. They gave her this 4-foot advanced jump. She then took the mark. I don't see why not, but she took the mark, right? Took the mark, but then the coach, knowing that his or her athlete, probably doesn't jump that, said, you know what? Let's enter this mark into the championship. Let's enter this mark into Arcadia Invitational. Let's enter this athlete into Mount Sac Relays. This athlete was in the championship section for all of these national showcase meets. What irritates me, pisses me off to be honest, but like, nah, I ain't that angry. It just irritates me. Disappointing. That's probably a better word. Disappointing. Is this athlete got a backpack from Arcadia. You know, got an Arcadia backpack. All right, I'm gonna leave it at that. Got a Mount Sac, I believe, got a backpack. I'm not sure. Um, Orange County Championships was in the final, which means all these situations, this athlete bumped out one athlete, meaning if Arcadia Night Meet takes top 18, that means there's one athlete that got bumped down, right? The athlete that won the day meet gets an invite to the night meet and also gets a backpack. That means that 2 people technically were out of a bag because the person that should have been in didn't get a bag. And now they had to win that section to go into the night meet, which got the bag that they should have received. And the other athlete who got second place would have technically gotten the bag because this person would have gotten into the meet. Follow me? And so it's just like, oh man. Same thing for Mount Sac, right? Orange County Championship. You have an athlete now that's in the first flight versus second flight. Like all these things fall into play. And I'm like, I just don't get it. I don't get it. And it's because of money. It all boils down to money. I have Leap Fest every single year. I hire USATF officials. Why? Because when you pay the money, the experience is there. Just pay the money. Because now you have officials that can run the meet faster. This year, 2024, we literally had 250 entries for jumps between long, triple, high, and pole vault. And we got all of them done in 5 hours. Think about the meets you go to. They're not done in 5 hours. These are big invitationals. It can be done if you have it set up a certain way. And I'm showing that with my event. But I also hire multiple officials. I now say, I'm going to hire even more officials to make sure the pit is ran a certain way and etc. Right? I also want to give the officials breaks because they don't get breaks. They usually work the whole time through and it's tiring. Anyway, what I'm trying to allude to is we have the money for the red coats. We have the money for the timing system, right? We need to make sure we're paying our officials. Right now in California, I typically pay, I believe it's $75 for 5 hours per official, I think. I don't know, I forget. Maybe 125. I don't know. Either way, I pay a certain amount per official. I just pay it because it changes the experience of the meet. Okay. There are so many times where you have a parent at the field event and there's a list of 40 athletes, or let's just go with 20 athletes. And the parent says, all right, so many athletes are here. Let's just do an open pit for long and triple. That makes no sense. Because now what's happening is if you give run through time, not everyone can do run throughs at the same time because they're doing other events, right? Also, you have an athlete that might do a run through in the beginning of the competition, does their events, it comes back and doesn't have time for a run through. You also have athletes who want to do long and or a triple, but if you put them together open pit, the problem now is you're having to figure out what board are they going from. Now it's all these boards, right? You're also having the different measurements, different pages to write on. Like athletes are also waiting. If you say every jump takes 30 seconds, right? 20 jumpers, you're jumping every 10 to 15 minutes because of the raking process. That's if you have a very strong raking group. It's just, yeah. And then many times, some of the parents don't even know how to actually measure the jump itself, right? As in, they're measuring different spots. I have an athlete this past weekend. He's been flirting with 48 feet every single weekend, right? He's literally being like behind the board. This time he was right on the board, jumps from a 38-foot board and gets passed by 2 feet the long jump board. I'm assuming it was a 12-foot board, let's just say. Mathematically, he's on pace for 48 feet, but they measured it at 46. And so I'm just not sure about, if it was measured correctly. And I'm justified to say because there was a coach or a parent when it should be an official with no bias. I'm not saying that the coach or whoever measured it did anything wrong or suspicious, not at all. But I mean, if you start an invitational and it's morning at 8 o'clock and the triple jump group is jumping at nighttime and it's daylight savings times already, which means it's probably 7, 8 o'clock. It's late, right? What I'm getting at is when you pay for the officials, the experience changes. Now this athlete is now competing to hit these bigger marks that allows them to have more resources or exposure for these colleges to be recruited into, right? So literally, like he was being recruited by a certain school. The next day he jumped a foot better, and then the next day he got an actual like offer to come visit the school. Well, as he keeps improving, more is going to come. But now we're saying, is it possible that he jumped further, but it was measured incorrectly? Now we have to wait another week, right, for this stuff to happen, even though the visit is before the meet. So, yeah, I just don't understand why we don't put the extra resources into it. And if we don't have the money, because I understand money is a thing, if that is the case, well, then let's put together within our bylaws for each state, each region, each whatever, each league that says you must at least take this free course on how the events should be ran. If you're running triple jump, here's where a foul is. Here's where not a foul is. If you hit 4 times, this is considered a foul. If you jump from the wrong board, you don't measure from that board. You only jump from the declared board, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can make this video. If you want to make this video, I'll do it. You got to pay me for it. You got to pay me for it because I don't work for free, right? But I could put this process together, right? And we can actually make sure that everything is done consistently to make sure that everything is run right. Now, I can't change this low sand situation, right? It is what it is. However, if we're going to not allow certain marks for low sound to count for certain meets, then we shouldn't post athletes who run these state leading times that are over the allowed wind because it's a distraction, right? These athletes don't have control over the wind. But if you're going to say we're not going to post these marks because it was in a low pit, then you shouldn't post the marks that are ran because of high aided wind, right? Or on the flip side is let's make sure we highlight the jumps and the running events that are done within the parameters of the rules. Let's keep these kids safe. Let's make sure that we're keeping the boards proper when it comes to either painting the boards or making sure it's wood. Get rid of the plastic boards. Just get rid of them, right? And if you're building a new track, I 100% suggest advise the people who are building the track to not give you the insert boards. If you're not going to tend to the boards, simple. Just make it all rubber and paint the boards. Paint them. So whenever they're fading away, you just paint them. It's easy. Takes 10 seconds. But if you do have the time, then you're going to have the wooden boards, and you're going to replace these boards depending on how many meets you have at your school, once a year or twice per year, depending on how many competitions you have or how many athletes you have. I'm gonna leave it there because I feel like this is a lot. Um, I really hope that this video goes viral because people need to hear it. And yeah. All right. Till next time.